This is the J. Scott Outdoors podcast on Western big game hunting and fishing, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today. I'm your host, Jay Scott, and I live and breathe hunting and fishing, spending half the year in the field experiencing God's creation. I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our adventures. Guys, welcome to the podcast. Before we get going, I wanted to add a couple things that actually Darr and I forgot about in this episode, and that's communication. Darr and I use radios that are made by Motorola. They're the CP200s. Cody Goff, our good friend Cody Goff with Outdoor Two-Way. That's the letter or the number 2, outdoor2way.com. He has fixed us up several times over the years with great radios, and that's who we get our radios from. It's from a safety concern. It's always good to have good communication throughout the ranches down in Mexico, and it makes for an enjoyable hunt. Usually all of the hunters have a radio, all of the guides have a radio, and it's important to always be checking in. And vehicles break down, people fall and slip. There's all kinds of things that can happen. So I want to thank Cody Goff for his constant support of Darr and I at Colburn and Scott Outfitters. Another thing I wanted to bring up is the cell phone service down in Mexico is not very good. But if you go to Walgreens or Walmart, you can pick up actually a phone that's called the Go phone. And it's in a little orange case, and it's the AT&T Go phone, and I want to say they're like 15 or 20 bucks. And you can buy those phones. It comes with a charger. It's kind of a cheap flip phone, but you can actually activate on the back of the box. You can get on there and create a password and what have you, and actually can buy minutes right there, either on your computer or on the phone itself. And even when you run out of minutes, you can, I think it's dial 6, and it will connect you, and you can automatically add minutes. A lot of the towns and a lot of the areas around certain towns in northern Mexico and around Hermosillo, you can actually talk very well on the Mexican cell phone. So and then we use the satellite phone on most of the ranches. When you get away from civilization, you get out on those ranches, and I want to thank Global Star. Actually, over the summer of this 2015 summer, I was contacted by Global Star, and they actually wanted me to be an ambassador for Global Star, and I've been using that GSP 1700 Global Star satellite phone, which is ironic because about 10 years ago, I actually bought that same phone and I used it for many years. And then actually the service really fell off, and the Global Star actually had to spend $1 billion and update all of their satellites. And that's something that Iridium, the other satellite manufacturer, Iridium, I understand, has to do the same thing. They have not done so. But the service now, I don't get any dropped calls, and the service is crystal clear. When you're on the Iridium phone, which I've used also quite extensively, you used to get pretty darn good reception, but there's always like some feedback on the call. It actually sounds like you're drunk. It's like a little delayed sound, whereas the Global Star phone is crystal clear. It sounds just like you're on a landline. So I just wanted to bring that up as far as communication down in Mexico. Hopefully a few of those tips can help you. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to the podcast. I want to thank you for all your support. You can email me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Any questions or comments? I'd love to see the archery bucks, and if you've got questions about the application seasons and such coming up, feel free to give me an email at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. You can follow along our adventures at J. Scott Outdoors .com. You can also follow on Instagram at jscottoutdoors, on our YouTube channel, J Scott Outdoors, Facebook, J Scott Outdoors. So, guys, let's get right to this episode with Darr Colburn. Welcome to the J Scott Outdoors podcast. Today I've got my hunting partner, my guiding partner, and my real estate buddy, Darr Colburn, on the line. Darr, how you doing?
I'm great, Jay. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. You know, I'm getting excited to go down to Mexico. We're recording this episode about 6 days before we head down on our 2.5-week pilgrimage down there to Mexico, and it's one of those times of year that I always just look forward to. You getting excited?
I'm getting really excited. Yes, it's New Year's Eve here, and we're a few days away from heading south of the border.
Yeah, you know, I got a text message from one of the hunters. We leased a couple ranches this year, and we're trying out a new thing to send some do-it-yourself type situations, and got a text last night at 10:20. Two guys went down, and Sean and his buddy Tyler, and Sean got a nice buck. It's got a fork on his off his main beam on his right side, and they had snow. They had all kinds. I mean, you don't think of Mexico as being, you know, super cold and snow. I think they had 6 inches of snow one morning when we had that big winter storm come through Arizona and Mexico here, and so they had a sticky, messy adventure. But they got one buck, and they're going to go back for the rut here in a couple weeks. So they were pretty excited.
Yeah, it's been unseasonably, I would say, cold here in Arizona. I mean, it's, I would say, low 30s here at my house this morning. So it's definitely, cold.
Yeah, we're going to get into this episode and talk all about our Mexico hunts. Before that, you and Parker are headed out tomorrow. I believe he's got to have archery javelina tag. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, the archery javelina hunt starts here tomorrow in Arizona. So Parker has a tag, so we're going to go out. Hunt archery deer also is open, so we're going to probably chase some deer and hopefully find some pigs and just get out on New Year's Day and enjoy it. Absolutely.
Darr, you are the past president of the Bow Hunters Association, and you're an avid bow hunter, you and your son both. Give me a couple of tips for guys that are going out archery deer hunting, whether it be Coues deer or mule deer. You know, January 1st through the whole month of January is open for bow hunting. Tell me a little bit about what they may expect out there, and maybe a few tips to them for archery hunting deer.
Well, I would say, we're probably, depending on what part of the state you're hunting, you might catch some of the mule deer rut when you're out there, and some of the Coues deer rut / pre-rut. Our deer here in Arizona, rut December, January, depending on the species, and so this is a great time of year to be out chasing deer with your bow. Usually you see, lots of bucks because they're out either with does or cruising looking for does, and cool temperatures, which we don't get a lot here in Arizona, and it's just a pleasant time to be out because the weather's nice and the deer are rutting, so it's a great time to be in the field.
If you're going to a new area, Darr, share with me kind of your mindset and your strategy. Let's say you're going to a completely new area that you're checking out. What are you going to do to find deer, and what are you looking for as, say, you're driving in your Ranger or your truck to figure out where the deer are, glassing knobs? Kind of walk me through a little bit of strategy and tactics to give some guys out there that need some tips on how to find archery deer spots and what have you.
Well, this time of year I would probably try and cover as much country as I could with my eyes, and just moving around at different places and trying to find does, because you'll probably, if you find some does, there'd probably be a buck around. So I would be moving around, glassing, cover.
Are you looking for particular knobs, or, I mean, if you've never been to a spot, do you just find a knob and say I'll crawl up there for an hour and see what I can find, and then move around from there?
Yeah, definitely find vantage points that allow you to see, a good amount of country, and just keep moving until you find some deer, and you probably find some bucks this time of year.
One of the cool things about Arizona's archery season is, like you said, you could hunt mule deer or Coues deer. The tag is good for buck deer, so pretty neat to be able to go out and see. There's lots of areas in Arizona where you can see Coues and mule deer off the same knob. So pretty cool. Well, I hope you and Parker get into some action tomorrow, and I'm going to continue prepping. And Gene and I have been working on the food prep and such here for Mexico, and getting all the ducks in a row. I've started packing last night, packing all my clothing and a lot of my gear, and we're going to get into that here in this episode. Darr, we looked at ranches. Well, before we get to that, let's talk about the weather. I've got the weather pulled up for Douglas, Arizona, and Douglas is the port on the U.S. side where we go into Mexico. It's a la Prieta on the Mexico side, and we are going down on the 6th of January. Actually, we're going to meet up with Giannis Patelis and Stephen Ranella of the Meat Eater. Giannis is the producer of the Meat Eater, and both Steve and Giannis are buddies of ours, and we're actually, Darr, gonna do a podcast episode on the Meat Eater podcast, which is always fun, hanging out and talking with those guys. Those guys, if you haven't checked it out, have a very successful podcast, and we're kind of instrumental in getting me to start this podcast. So I give those guys a lot of credit. If you haven't checked them out, you need to at themeateater.com. But we're going to go down and actually meet our hunters on the 7th, the morning of the 7th, Darr, and head to Mexico. And I'm looking at the weather as far out as I can, and it's partly cloudy, 54 and 28 is a low, and if you take that on down, it's 52 as a high, 26 as a low, 53, 55, 57, 58, but mixed in there for 3 or 4 days. Kind of on our travel day, we've got showers, AM showers, PM showers, 60%, 40%, 80%. I think Monday, January 4th, 80% chance of showers. But then about our first day down there, it's going to be a little stormy, but then it's supposed to clear up. What kind of role do you think the weather's going to play in looking at this forecast, having a pretty good sized winter storm come through and then have it clear up?
Well, I think it's setting up to be great. My opinion is anytime you get some moisture before that, the rut, I think in its cool temperatures, I think that moisture on the ground holds the scent better, and cool temperatures allows those deer to move around more, versus being hot. So I think it's setting up to be really good for deer movement and rutting activity.
Yeah, last year we were down those same dates. I think we went down on the 7th and maybe the 8th. I'll have to look back at the calendar. But actually the first year, last year, was warm. I remember it being very, very warm, not really even needing a jacket hardly in the mornings. And we didn't have a lot of rutting activity during that week last year, that first week, whereas the second week it really turned on. But, a couple years ago, if you remember right, we went down there that first week and they were already rutting. So I think, and you can weigh in on it, I think cool weather and certainly, like you said, a little bit of moisture on the ground certainly helps. I think it keeps that scent down, like you said, and it's just interesting to try and time the rut down in Mexico. I definitely think the deer rut later than our deer in Arizona. I think, some of the central Arizona units, the last 3 or 4 days of December and say the first week of January is usually really good rutting. But we found the further south you go, the rutting actually, takes longer for it to get going. And, mountain ranches usually south of the U.S. border, I'm going to say anytime from, say, the 5th of January to the 25th of January is kind of prime time with those real prime dates, being probably anywhere from the 10th to the 25th. What are your thoughts on the rut?
Yeah, definitely. The farther south you go, the later the rut is. Um, so I think traditionally that second week we're down there typically is probably the best rutting activity we see. So I think this year with the cooler weather and everything and the moisture, it's going to set up just for a good hunt.
Yeah, for sure. I've got on the forecast here all the way out to January 14th is as far as this forecast goes, and it basically says 61 is a high, 30 is a low, partly cloudy, 10-mile-an-hour wind. Speaking of wind, I think, once they get rutting, I would rather have just kind of clear, consistent, cold days. Not too cold, but we've seen it. We've seen it when it's so cold in the mornings. I'll call you on the radio and say, you got anything? And we'll go for an hour before we even see a deer. Sometimes even long. I mean,
yeah, we've had a couple hours where there's just no deer movement.
Yeah, I mean, we call Hunter on the radio. Hunter, you got anything? Darr, you got anything? We're calling around different, glassing points, and nobody's got anything, because I think those deer, when it gets down in the 20s, I think those deer know that if they lay there, they can conserve more energy than if they're up on their feet. So I think there's a fine line between wanting good cold temperatures and having it be too cold too.
Yeah, I would agree. And having hunted Coues deer as much as we have, that the 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock time period, even on the early hunts, can be good. Those deer tend to move around, throughout the day.
Yeah, and I think as the rut progresses, through that, whatever 10-day, 14-day window that, the rut is really strong, it seems as though, all times of the day are great for glassing. And, what would you say your strategy is on a cold morning? Which side of the hill are you going to be looking on, or do you base where you're going to be glassing in the morning if it's going to be real crisp and cold? Which direction are you going to be looking?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, when it's super cold, those deer are going to want to be in the sun when the sun comes up. So you want to be on the east-facing or south-facing slopes where those deer, can get in the sun and warm up, especially when that sun comes up.
And a lot of times, speaking of the sun coming up, if you're facing where the sun's at your back and the mountain is glowing, it's amazing how where the first place that the sun actually, there's that time period when, it's just the sun hasn't crested over the horizon, but it's amazing where that sun actually crests over the horizon and actually puts a glow, and actually the sun hits the hill first. It's amazing how many times you can glass that exact spot, and there'll be deer bedded right there on that line waiting for that sun. It's as if they know that that's the first place the sun's going to hit.
Yeah, no, that's a good point for the even morning and evening. In the morning when it's cold, you can glass that shadow line of the sun, and a lot of times, as soon as that sun hits those deer, they'll stand up. And same thing in the afternoon if it's hot, glassing that shadow line. As soon as that sun goes down and they're in the shade, a lot of times they'll get up. So it's good strategy to glass those sun lines.
Yeah, absolutely. Darr, we spend a lot of time in the off season looking for new ranches and new properties to hunt, and we previously hunted up a ranch for 3 years in a row, and you and I both are kind of we like to hop around. I mean, I like new country. I like learning new country. I like looking at new stuff. That's not to say if we find a good property that we won't hunt it a lot, but what is it about new country that just gets us both going?
I think it's just the unknown. You just never know, what you're going to turn up, and the grass is always greener on the other side. We're always looking for better places, that's for sure, even when we have good ranches.
I know it's funny. We've laughed over the years with our buddy Steve Winery and my cousin Jimmy Vincent, and just all the adventures. I think this is going to be my 17th year down in Mexico, and it's hard to believe that we've gone that much. But what is it about us that you're always teasing me that we get a ranch, and the very first thing we do is we race those rangers to the furthest part of the ranch, go to the very back of the ranch, get to the fence, set up our binos, and look across and go, gosh, it looks good over there.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's just human nature.
Just go to the far reaches of the ranch and look across on the other side wishing you were over there. And, we've had some fun times down there.
Tired of relying on out-of-date numbers, spending too much on hunting consultants, and seeing too little results? With Go Hunt Insider, the old way of doing things is over. With the introduction of Draw Odds and Filtering 2.0, you'll have access to the most accurate, up-to-date information in the industry. You can filter by state, species, trophy potential, weapon, specific days or months of the year, harvest success rate, male to female ratios, and much more. All of this leads to easily finding the best hunt for you. So what are you waiting for? Visit GoHunt.com/insider and join the movement.
Use the J. Scott promo code when signing up and receive a $50 Coues gift card. Since 1982, the Outdoorsman's in Phoenix has made it their goal to provide the very best customer service combined with the latest and greatest optics and accessories in the business. Outdoorsman's is the leading designer and manufacturer of high-quality tripods and mounting accessories for any hunter's optical needs. Go to outdoorsmans.com or call 1-800-291-8065 and use the J. Scott promo code until February 28th to receive 10% off all Outdoorsman's packs and pack accessories.
Darr, back to looking at ranches in the off season. The two ranches, we're taking two groups of hunters this year ourselves that we're doing fully outfitted hunts, and tell me, from my perspective, when you're taking people on a Coues deer hunt, there's several ranch types that you can get. You can get the desert ranch, down by Hermosillo, down by Caborca or Santa Ana, where, it's deserty country and, there's a lot of flats and you can get up on knobs and glass and see those deer out there, 2-3 miles, and some big deer. You can find some really big deer in the flats. The biggest deer I've ever killed has been in the flats. 134, I think it netted over 131 inches was out in the flats. And then you can hunt what we call mountain ranches. And, I just have a love for mountain ranches. I love the spot and stock style. I love the canyons and glassing across the canyons where if you see something, you can usually make a setup on a buck and get over to them and get them shot. What are your favorite types of ranches and why?
Well, I would just say for the listeners, let's go back to the mountain ranch where you killed your big buck, and you and I were down there.
You mean the desert ranch?
Yeah, the desert ranch with Randy Ulmer and his nephew, Zach. And I want to say, if my memory serves me correct, you and I spent 7 days, the first trip, 7 days down there, splitting up, each going different directions for a week. And I want to say in a week we saw like 4 bucks between the two of us in a week of hunting.
Yeah, I want to say like 10 deer total, or maybe 10 does and 4 bucks, splitting up, going separate ways each day. Each being out with the radio, each being able to talk to each other and, communicate how many deer you're seeing. And it was tough. And I might add that, the further south you go down by Hermosillo, that Coues deer rut usually isn't until the last week of January and the first week of February.
Yep.
Fortunately, the seasons go all the way to, I believe, usually around the 8th of February. And, the further south you go, I want to say that first trip, if you remember some of the times we were leaving the ranch, the thermometer a couple times was 90 degrees in January.
Yeah, no, it was warm. It's definitely a lower elevation, warmer temperature climate down there. But going back to that, there are some giant deer down there. The problem lies, when you're taking hunters and trying to show people a good time who have never hunted Coues deer before. It's hard to sit there and grind it out and see 4 bucks in a 7-day hunt.
Yeah, I mean, hunting the desert definitely has its rewards, but I mean, like we've done, we've been there before and seen bucks out there at 2-3 miles. And as soon as you drop down in elevation, you're down on the desert floor, and you really have absolutely no way to get in there tight on those Coues deer bucks to get them shot. Unless you're going to hunt them in a high rack, which a lot of hunters and outfitters, they choose the method of riding around in a high rack, which is a truck with a cage on top, and they can see over the tops of the Palo Verdes and the mesquite, which is not the way we like to do it. Nothing wrong with it. We prefer to glass them up and spot and stock. I think the mountain ranches play right into our strengths and what we like to do. The 2 ranches that we're hunting this year with our fully outfitted guys, the one ranch, the first ranch that we're going to hunt, we went down and looked at it. I want to say, was it last February or early March last year?
Yep.
And it's in an area that we've hunted around, some ranches around with good genetics. There's been some big deer coming off the ranches that neighbor this ranch. And, one of the factors for me was that the last time the ranch was hunted was 2009. And they've had no other hunters there since 2009, and that was a big plus to me because I figured that, if there was a deer that, say, even deer that were born, would be, 5 years old now, not to mention some of the bucks that were alive when the last hunters left there. They could be 6, 7, 8-year-old bucks. And we went down and looked at the ranch, and, the roads, to be quite honest, are not good compared to what we're used to on mountain ranches. But the country, they hadn't run any cattle on the majority of the ranch, and there was a lot of feed, and it just had a really good look. I'm excited to see what we're going to get on that ranch.
Yeah, it just had a feeling like it hadn't been hunted very much, and it's pretty wild country. Because of not having cattle, there's a lot of good feed, a lot of growth. There's a burn that's several years old that burned some of the thick stuff off and has opened it up. It looks like a really good ranch, and we saw a really good buck. So, hopefully we can get down there and have a good time.
Yeah, it's a little different than some of the ranches we hunt in that there's thicker parts of the ranch. It's kind of a high mountain ranch. We hunt some mountain ranches, like our second ranch we're hunting, I would consider more of a low mountain ranch that's got quite a bit of mesquite and ocotillo, whereas this ranch has got quite a bit of oak, some mesquite, but quite a bit of oak and juniper. When we went, we saw a big buck. He was 150 yards from the ranger, and we looked at each other and in trying to figure out if we were going to take the ranch or not. It's like, how can we see a buck that we would shoot, that we would be tickled to shoot a big, nice, big buck and not take the ranch? It would have been hard to walk away and not even try and go down and see if that buck made it through. Hopefully a lion hasn't gotten him, and hopefully we can find that buck again and relocate him and get him killed.
Yep. Well, and there's a lot of country there. I mean, we like you said, we've hunted ranches on kind of either side of this. We know the genetics in the area are really good. And this ranch not having been hunted, I think it just sets up, perfect for us to come in there and try and extract a few deer.
Yeah, I don't think the density is going to be super high. I think it's probably going to be, a medium density. I think it's probably going to be a a $5, $5, $6, $7 a day, maybe type of place, and maybe 10, 15 type of doe type of place. What's your impression of what density should be?
Yeah, typically I would say when you get the mesquite, ocotillo type of, mountain ranches, they typically have more deer, a little higher deer density. This place, like you said, is just a little bit higher in elevation, more up on the mountain. And, not to say that Oaks, we haven't had ranches that have high density of deer in the Oaks, but this particular ranch up on the mountain, it seems like the density is a little bit lower, but there's some big nasty stuff there that I could just see a big buck coming out of for sure.
Yeah, you talk about that big nasty stuff. There's like these big ridges, and you can look back from these high points, and we took a bunch of pictures and video, and it's got country. When you look at it, it's got a real wild feel. It's got a real rough, like big canyon country type feel, kind of haired over.
Definitely.
And it's just one of those things you never know. You've got this feeling that a hog could just roll out of the brush, and come down maybe looking for some does. And so I'm excited about that place. And
that's I would say that's the benefit of being able to go down and hunt during the rut and pre-rut is you never know what can come sauntering out of the woodwork. I mean,
yeah,
you never know what you could scan over and see. It just.
And I mean, I think that's what keeps us coming back every year is what could be there, and we're always after those 110, 115, 120, whatever we can find, bucks with character, kickers, what have you, and I just love the wildness of that ranch. And we've got an associate down in Mexico that we have go look at a bunch of ranches for us when we're not there, and take pictures and video and send us photos of ranches. And he looked at a bunch of ranches, and he looked at a ranch and he said, you guys need to come down and look at this one. And that's the second ranch we're hunting. This ranch I haven't been to this particular ranch. I've hunted some ranches around it, but it's got good access to the ranch. The roads on the ranch are good. It's got quite a bit of yellow grass. It's got mesquite, ocotillo. It borders a highway down there, and on one side of the highway that's a little more lower, a little desertier looking country. You went down and looked at this ranch. I want to say, was it August or was it early October?
I think it was early October. The second
early
I
October.
went to.
Okay.
And it's country we like. It's a lot of ocotillo, a lot of haired over mesquite, rolling, base of the mountain, foothills of the mountain type country, all the way up to Oaks. It's a little bit higher density, so I think that'll be a fun hunt as well. A lot of good glassing points.
Yeah, you and I have been going over the Google Earth. We like to use Google Earth and get the ranches we're hunting and put the fence lines on there and put the roads and mark each water tank and kind of start picking apart the ranches and trying to figure out kind of pre-scouting without knowing the country very well, going down there trying to already have knobs established. Google Earth's amazing that you can take the tool, you can drag it down to a point, and it gives you the bird's eye. There's the bird's eye view from above, and then you can drag it down, and it's kind of the on the ground look, and you can pan 360 and look, okay, what's my view from this knob? And I think Google Earth is an amazing tool. The other day I just emailed you a copy of the file, and you were able to open it up on your computer, and we were able to just go over, different parts of each ranch that we're hunting and, discuss, the different attributes of certain knobs. And it, tell me what your thoughts are about being able to do that and use Google Earth as a scouting tool.
Oh, it's a huge tool, especially when we've got several people going, several guides that are going to go be down there helping us, and hunters, multiple hunters. It allows us to, almost script the first few days where we're going to go, where we're going to glass from, water sources, roads, fence lines. It just helps us get a few days ahead of where we would be if we didn't have that, all set up already.
You mentioned something there. There's one thing too, going down to these ranches and having them all scouted out and having bucks picked out and everything, and that's great. You and I do a lot of desert sheep hunts and rocky sheep hunts and elk hunts and all sorts of other things that we're guiding. And honestly, one of the things that gets me so energized about going to Mexico is we're hunting. We go and we lock the gate on our ranch. We get our stuff set up in the house. We get our food all set up, and then we get in the Rangers and we take off. And it's, we're hunting. It's not an execution. It's not like we just pull up. That deer's right here, and you get out and just shoot that deer. It never happens like that. And I think that's what makes us good at what we do is we're not burnt out on the ranch. It's all fresh to us. It's new, and we're excited to crawl up on every knob and figure out the ranch. And I think that's part of loving Coues deer is loving Coues deer hunting is, figuring a ranch out, figuring out a piece of country, learning how to hunt it and figuring it out. You always joke with me that, once we really learn a piece of country, I'm ready to move on and go learn another piece.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's just, it's the unknown. It's the grass is always greener. You're always looking for, something better, something different, and just the challenge of it, I think.
Yeah. Darr, we offer, on our guided hunts, we offer seven full days of hunting. And a lot of times on the front end, on the travel day, we like to get to the border early on that morning that we're traveling in and hopefully get to the ranch with a half a day hunting. So most of our hunts are 7.5 days. And a lot of other outfitters, there's some great outfitters out there, by the way, but a lot of other outfitters, they only do 5-day hunts. And we've talked about how, I just feel like you can't really, it's 2 or 3 days before we get into a groove and a rhythm. I just feel like 5 days feels like it's squeezing and going by so fast.
Yeah, and, especially if you have 4 or 5 hunters in, 5 days, that means you're shooting almost a buck a day. You have to. And, it just, I like the 7-day format just because it allows, it seems like each of our hunters to get that extra couple days, where they don't have to necessarily shoot something on the 3rd or 4th day that they wouldn't want to shoot.
Yeah, for sure. Some of these ranches that our guy down in Mexico went and looked at and took a bunch of photos of and video and such, we have several different groups of hunters going down to some of these ranches in kind of a do-it-yourself style situation. And we've got another group, friends of ours, going down here in right around the same time we're going to go down, and it'll be exciting to see their success and how they like the different ranches. And it's every ranch is different, from big to little to medium size to low density, high density, great roads to just okay roads to no roads. I mean, there's kind of a little bit of everything down in Mexico. We see ranch houses that are not very good to really nice to just okay. And I think, what is it about Coues deer specifically that has enamored you? And you love Coues deer so much, you named your firstborn child, his middle name is Coues, Parker Coues Colburn. What is it about the deer themselves?
I just think they're small, they're crafty. They're tough as heck. They're jumpy. They get chased by lions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They live in just beautiful country, there's a great opportunity to hunt them in Arizona and Mexico, and that's one of the things I really enjoy about Mexico is that we get to go down and hunt them during the rut, and it's guaranteed tags. Whereas Arizona, I like hunting them here, but at the same time, you're out there if you get the high odds hunts, which are the October, November hunts, you're going to be out there with 500 or 600 of your closest friends. And then if you do beat the odds and draw one of the later hunts, you're still going to have anywhere from 25 to 100 tag holders in the unit, and you're not really hunting, I would say, the rut. I would say it's more pre-rut. So Mexico, you're able to go down there and hunt populations of deer that aren't as pressured, aren't hunted as much or at all, and you're getting to hunt them in the rut. So it's a special time to be down there for sure.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors.
Whether you are interested in elk, deer, antelope, bighorn sheep, or moose, Western Hunter and Elk Hunter magazines will bring the adventure to your mailbox. These publications feature articles on the finest hunting gear, tips and tactics from experienced hunters, field judging trophies, glassing techniques, calling strategies, and much more. To become a more knowledgeable and skilled hunter, subscribe today. Go to westernhunter.net/jscott and enter your email address for a chance to win a $1,500 credit towards any Swarovski product. Utah Hydrographics is in the water transfer printing service, and they are open to whatever you can dream up. Choose from a wide range of camo patterns, designs, and colors. Whether it's guns, bows, tools, rifle stocks, vehicles, steering wheels, fenders, dashboards, paint guns, fishing rods, cups, tripods, watches, knife grips, helmets for a local sports team or for your motorcycle, picture frames, mailbox, animal skulls, you name it, they can probably do it. Utah Hydrographics loves taking things that are general looking and turns them into something that looks fantastic and eye-popping. Give them a call and see what they can do for you and receive up to a 10% discount by using the JScott16 promo code. Visit them at utahhydrographics.com or on Instagram at Utah Hydrographics.
Darr, one of the things that I like so much about Mexico is we go to these ranches, we unlock the gate, we drive through the gate, we lock the gate, and we just go hunting. We don't have to worry about, other hunters and what have you. And to me, that's a relief. That's one of the reasons why I just love Mexico, because it's kind of a wild place. The deer are plentiful. You usually see a lot of bucks compared to does. It seems like you see more bucks in Mexico per doe than you see in the States. And I just love that feeling of having, your ranch and, it's you against the deer and you don't have to worry about other people coming and shooting deer and spooking deer. And, you can find a buck on the first day and you're like, man, he's like 105 inches, I'm looking for a 110 or I'm, whatever it is you're looking for. And you can leave that deer and have a chance to know that you come back and, nobody else is jostled with the deer and try and find that deer again. I just love that feeling of Mexico. And that's one of the things that draws me to it is, it seems like, these days, in this day and age of hunting, it's just very, very competitive. And, that's one of the reasons why I like hunting private ground a lot. And, I like hunting both, but I like hunting private ground because I enjoy the hunt and I don't have to manage people as much as I would on a public land hunt.
That's exactly it. You're hunting versus trying to manage people. So.
Yeah. Darr, I want to talk a little bit about the gear that we're going to take down and that we've learned to love over the years. And I'm going to go through mine a little bit, and you kind of chime in on what you like and what you're taking. I am going to be wearing my Coues guide pant, especially on these colder days. The material on the Coues guide pant, the outer material is a little bit more durable for the cat claw and the brush that we encounter for Coues deer. Below that, in the mornings, I'm going to have the Coues long underwear, and I have both the lightweight. I believe there's a 145 and a 210, but there's basically a lightweight and a heavyweight of the long underwear. And one of the things I like about the long underwear that Coues makes is it zips on and off. So at noon, when it's the warmest part of the day, you can literally just undo your belt, pull your pants down, and unzip the long underwear off without having to take your boots off. Now, I really like that feature of the Coues long underwear. What are you going to be wearing for pants down there?
Yeah, I'll probably be wearing the Chinook pants with a Coues long underwear underneath them. The Chinook, to me, it just has a tougher shell, and they're a great pant. That and the Chinook jacket, I always wear that on top of usually my Kenai or Super Down jacket.
Yeah, so for my top, I usually start out with the Coues 145. I like the solid color. For some reason, to me, the softest material, the softest shirt is that solid color. I usually wear that as my base, and then I'll usually wear the thicker ultramarino top. I believe it's a 210 top. Sometimes I wear two. Most of the time I wear two shirts with the thicker one being on top, and then I wear the Super Down vest and the Super Down jacket, and then usually the guide jacket over the top, and sometimes the Chinook jacket over the top. This year, for the first time, I'm going to be able to I've got the Coues jacket now, which is the synthetic jacket, which is supposed to replace the Super Down jacket. And I've worn the Coues.
That's the Kenai, right?
The Kenai. And I like it because it's got pit zips and it breathes. If you're going to do any hiking at all with the Super Down vest or the Super Down jacket, it doesn't breathe. The nature of that jacket with the down doesn't breathe well, and so normally I get to my knob, ride the quad, which is real cold, and then I take all that stuff off and I go down to my base layer, which is sometimes a little cold starting out, but as soon as you start up and start gaining elevation, you start warming up pretty quick. And then once I get to the glassing knob, I lay my backpack down. Usually it's dark or just about getting light, and I sit down and I put either a fresh undershirt base layer on. If I've got a long hike and I get wet, put a clean, fresh shirt, dry shirt on, and then I layer up with that Super Down vest, Super Down jacket, and if the wind's blowing, a lot of times I'll also put over the Kenai or over the Super Down jacket, I will put my rain jacket on. What are you going to be running on top and for your jacket?
Well, let me just interject here and say that there's probably listeners out there that are thinking we're in the upper 20s, low 30s, and talking about down and 4 jackets, and they're probably laughing at us thinking that we have no idea cold.
I'm like a lizard, Darr.
But I will say that we've had people from back east, some of our hunters from back east, Kansas, back east. Our friend Steve Winery from Colorado, who lives in Gunnison, Colorado, one of the coldest spots in the nation, and he's been out hunting with us in 20 degrees in the desert, the dry desert air. It feels a lot colder than it is. Something about just that dry air makes it cold, and then sometimes we'll have 30 minute to an hour minute quad or ranger ride to the areas we hunt, and It's definitely cold. I know it doesn't sound cold to some of you, upper 20s, low 30s, but that air just bites you, and it's definitely cold. So um, layering is very important because it does warm up fairly quickly when that sun comes up. So having multiple layers that you can shed quickly is definitely a key.
Absolutely. What are you running on top? What are you running for shirt? And
Typically, I run a couple of the Ultra Merino shirts, usually the lightweight, solid color as the base layer, and a little heavier zip top on top of that. And then I'll run usually my Kenai or Super Down jacket with the Chinook jacket as the outer shell on top of those.
do you ever wear your rain jacket when it gets cold to block the wind, or when the wind's really blowing?
I will if it's really windy. That the Chinook jacket usually does a pretty good job unless it's really, really windy. I'll throw the rain gear on if I have to.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that's I've really enjoyed last season using, and I'm looking forward to using them, is the Coues glassing mitts. They're a mitten, not a glove, and I can wear those Coues merino lightweight gloves, and then the guide glove, when I'm hiking or whatever. And then when I start glassing, I actually take the guide glove off and leave the merino hand gloves on and put them inside the mitts. And those Coues glassing mitts are awesome. I really like that, and can stay warm. And like you said, I'm like a lizard. I don't like the cold. I get cold easy, and so I usually layer up a lot. I wear that Coues face, the neck gaiter that you pull up over your face when I'm glassing, and get it as high. I also wear it for sun protection, but it keeps the little bit of breeze off. And I like the hoods on every jacket I have is hooded with the Super Down. I like to pull that hood, and I love that. I'm running the Schnees. The Schnees, which one am I running? The Granites, and this is my second pair of Granites, and I really like them. They're heavy. I actually had some Asolos that I bought and used for sheep season, and really like that Asolo Fugitive boot. Giannis, the producer over at the Meat Eater, our friend, turned me on to those, and I had to send that pair back because after wearing them for a while, they just were a touch small, and it was a bummer because I wore them around this summer in the condo in Colorado while I was up there during fishing season, and I thought they were fit just perfect, and it turned out that once I really used them in the mountain conditions going downhill, my toe would hit in the front of the toe box, and while I loved the shoe because they're quite a bit lighter than the Schnees Granite, my toe was hitting, so I haven't gotten the bigger size yet. But the one thing I did like about those boots is they were quite a bit lighter, Darr. You've had a pair of those Schnees Granite, and they're bomb-proof. You can hike through brush and real steep stuff, and you have real good ankle support. I know you've got wide feet. What are you running for boots?
Yeah, I've had the Schnees Granites and liked them. I've had those. I've had the Kenetrex, and those are the heavier duty boots. And I've liked them. I've gotten 2 seasons out of both of those, which is a lot for us. It seems like usually I just don't get more than a season or 2 out of a pair of boots. Currently, I'm running a little bit lighter boot. I don't know the model. It's the Solomon, and I really, really like it. It's a little bit lower. It's like a high top tennis shoe, style boot. So it's a little bit above the ankle, but not up on the calf. It's a little lighter weight. It's not quite as good if you're running a big, heavy load in your pack. But if you're not, for day-to-day stuff and stalking and being quiet, it's super lightweight, and I really like it.
Speaking of pack, I just got the new Icon Pro 7200 I was running the Icon Pro 7200, and I've got the new one, and it's got a little bit slimmer frame. I really like it. I used it sheep season, and we were able to pack out Craig Dunlap's ram, and I really like the pockets on it. And what pack are you running this season?
I've run a combination. I just got the Icon Pro 7200 as well, so Mexico will be the initial run for it. My initial impression is I like it. It's got a little bit. I was running the Coues Ultra 6000, which is super lightweight, and it's awesome. It just lacks a little bit of compression straps down below and support when you get a pretty big heavy load in it. So the 7200 I think will be good. It's got a few more bells and whistles, a little bit heavier than the Ultra, but I think it'll be a great all-around pack.
Yeah, I really like those Coues packs. I also got the 3200 bag, which is basically just not as many bells and whistles. It's a smaller load capacity, but maybe better for like day trips and stuff. The thing I like about when I'm guiding with the 7200 is, I can compress it down with the straps, and it's basically like a 3200. But if I need to pack out a whole deer, I can actually slip a whole Coues deer in the 7200 and walk off the mountain with it if I had to. So I like having a bigger pack than a smaller pack. I'd rather have a bigger pack that I don't use the space and cinch it down than wish I had a bigger pack. The bad part about that is it seems like if the bigger your pack is, the more things that you go, oh yeah, I'll take this and I'll put this in there and I'll put that in there, and by the time you have it, your pack weighs 50 pounds.
Yeah, that's definitely no doubt about that.
Another thing that I get made fun of a lot, so whatever, but I like wearing shut up. I'll get a call on the radio and be like, hey Jay, I can see you over there because I can see your hat. I
think we were calling you the Ninja last year, weren't we? Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been called all kinds of names for my various hats that I've used over the years, but I don't know what they call, but they're the big flat brim boonie type hats that, and I try and get the biggest one. If I could keep a sombrero on my head, I would probably wear it. The sun beats me up pretty good, so I like to, try and get as much coverage with the sun as I can. I wear a ball cap a lot when I'm hiking and such, but when I'm really getting after it and glassing, I put on one of those big floppy hats, and I like that because the sun tends to stay off my face. If I don't watch it and if I don't wear sunscreen, and the sun just blisters me, and I've been down there, even my hands, I have to make sure that I put sunscreen on the tops of my hands, because if I'm not wearing my gloves, I got to watch it that my hands will really sunburn up. So I wear that. And let's talk about optics. Excuse me. For Coues deer, I am going to be taking down my 10 by 42 EL range Swarovskis around my neck. They will be in my Coues. I've got the Coues bino case, and so the 10 ELs will be around my neck. So if I have to range my client's deer, I can. Darr, I went on that desert sheep hunt with Craig Dunlap, and we were about to shoot his ram, and I had mistakenly taken my EL without my EL range, my 10 ELs, and I didn't have a rangefinder. Fortunately, Seth and Hunter were there, and they had their rangefinder, but I felt like an idiot. I'll be running those 10 ELs around my neck, and then the new 15 Swarovskis, 15 by 56 Swarovskis, and then my Swarovski STX spotting scope, the 30 to 70 power, the 95 millimeter objective. I'm a firm believer in Swarovski. That's every optic that I own is Swarovski except for the big Coues I will also have the big Koa Highlanders that I will use in places that I can get to relatively easy, not too long of a hike. But my go-tos are the 15 by 56. I think they're the best Coues deer binocular out there.
Yeah,
What are you going to be running?
I would agree. I'm running similar setup, 1042 ELs, not the range in my Coues pouch. I wear that, constantly, no matter what I'm doing. And then I carry my 1556, the new Swarovskis, and that's my everyday, setup, Arizona and Mexico. I do carry the Koas, and it's like you said, if you can glass from the road or get on a knob that's not too far from the road and glass a bunch of country, the Koas are great. But they're more of a specialty glass that you don't necessarily use every day.
Wilderness Athlete is committed to improving the health and quality of life for the outdoor athlete by providing field-tested, scientifically validated nutrition and sports performance product formulations. Check them out at wildernessathlete.com and use the JScott promo code to receive 10% off any order in January 2016. Have you guys heard about PhoneScope? PhoneScope is a privately held company that makes custom-molded, precisely engineered smartphone digiscoping adapters. Photographing wildlife has never been easier. Take digiscoping photos and videos from your smartphone and share them with your friends. PhoneScope stands behind their product with a 100% money-back guarantee. PhoneScope is the future of digiscoping. Get yours now. Use the JScott16 promo code and receive 10% discount on all purchases. Check them out at PhoneScope, that's PhoneSkope.com, or on Instagram at PhoneScope.
Yeah, and the tripod that I use is the Slick, and I want to say I used for years the Slick 713 CF2, and I don't have the particular model number that I use now, but it's basically the tripod that I can stand behind. It's got the carbon fiber legs. I use the Manfrotto head. I believe it's the 701 HDV. The tripod that I use for the Koas, I believe, is the Bogan Manfrotto 55XV. The tripod itself, I want to say, is 12 pounds. The Koas are 12 or 13 pounds. But the Slick tripod is really good. It's light. It works very good with the wind vibration. And I've gotten to really like that carbon fiber tripod over the years.
Yeah, I think it's the new model. I want to say, because I just got two of them. I finally got rid of the Slick that I've had. Like you said, I think it was the 714 or 13. Had it for 8 or 9 years and had to just finally get a new one. And I want to say it's the 823 or 824.
Now, is yours the same height as mine, or is yours one? Mine's in 3 sections, and I can stand behind. I'm 6'2", 6'3" on a good day, and I can stand behind. I have the tall post. I can stand behind. Is yours the one step shorter than that?
No, I'm 1 step shorter, but no, my tripod is not.
1 step shorter? Or?
Maybe 2.
What else do we got to cover here? One thing, Russ Jacoby from Flagstaff, who we're going to have on the podcast here later in January. We already recorded a great episode with him. I want to say 2 seasons ago, turned me on to those Sedona Ripsaw tires on the Ranger.
Yep.
And I believe you put them on your Ranger too. I really like the Sedona Ripsaw. The tire itself, where the actual, what would you call it, Darr? The outer part of the tire, the tread is actually really deep. It's like, I want to say it's like 2.5 inches or 3 inches. So there's quite a bit of clearance there between that and the actual tire where, mesquite thorns, because we're down in Mexico, we're running over mesquite brush and stuff like crazy. And I've had pretty good success with those Sedona ripsaws. I've actually worked my way through a whole set down there running around.
Well, yeah, I want to say I'm going on either the end of my second year or beginning of my third year on these tires, and I know you got yours a little bit before mine, so I've been really pleased with them.
Yeah, love those tires. We're running Rangers. I believe I've got a 800 XP. I think it's a 2011, and you're running a little bit older Ranger. Man, our Rangers have absolutely been through the ringer. For
sure. I know. I know we've had. They're crucial to what we do down there. We've both ridden in the new Razor 1000s, and the ride on them is unreal. And it's just a matter of the storage space. The Ranger. If they could put the Ranger bed on that new Razor, we'd probably both be running those.
Yeah, the ride is unbelievable. The carrying capacity, the cargo capacity is not good at all. I can't believe that they haven't had more requests to put a bigger bed. Even if you lost some of the performance as far as, top end speed or whatever, I don't need to go that fast. But the comfort of a Razor is amazing. Riding in Breck, Bundy's up there in 13B, I mean, just amazing how smooth they are. Blows a Ranger away. A Ranger's kind of, more of a workhorse, but, I've had good success with the Ranger. I like the Ranger because it's you can sit 3 people in it, whereas like a Rhino or something, it's only a two person. I think, guiding the ability to take 2 people with you is huge.
Yeah, and I've heard rumors that they might be coming out with something like that, but I don't know that for sure.
Oh man, gonna probably have to trade the Ford Raptor in just so I can afford a Razor.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, awesome, Darr. Is there any? Oh, I wanted to add on the gear. Seth Maskey's turned me on to those Sawyer mini filters, and we used them sheep season. I just love those little things. They weigh literally next to nothing, and we were drinking literally out of, it probably was, there's a bunch of wild donkeys or wild burros and such up there in 15D. For all I know, it was, a place where a donkey took a leak, and we were drinking out of those puddles that were literally like, 12 inches around and 2 inches deep, and drinking the water just fine. No repercussions from that. I really like that Sawyer Mini. I'll have that with me in Mexico. What it does is it saves me from packing a lot of water and adding a lot of weight when I know I've got my Sawyer Mini and I know there's puddles around and such. Man, you can carry less weight when you get to a little water, and you can keep your water full but not have to carry 4 or 5 bottles of water.
Yeah, I actually just bought one last night. They're like $20. I mean, and they weigh 2 ounces, so it's I don't know if I'll be just drinking out of puddles. I usually can pack enough water, but definitely a good thing to have in the pack. If you had to spend the night somewhere or you get low on water or something, it's the weight is minimal and it could save your life for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Do you have any other gear, Darr, that you want to add to the discussion?
No, you and I, the only other thing I would say is we carry the Havalon knives and blades. That's about the only knife I carry. And you turned me on to the Swarovski TLS APO adapter for our SLR cameras, and I just got one for sheep season and have been using it, and really, man, the pictures and video are unbelievable.
Yeah, Trent Swanson, who actually is a rep for Swarovski, actually told me originally about the TLS APO adapter, and Cody Nelson down at the Outdoorsman's, they sell them down there, and my digiscoping videos, I think, are way better with that setup, and I'm excited, Darr. phonescope.com. Phonescope has stepped up to be a sponsor of this podcast, and I'm going to start using that Phonescope adapter a little bit in my digiscoping and give that a run. I've heard a lot of great things about it, and the TLSA post Swarovski is awesome, and I've used it for a couple of years now and really like it, and I'm anxious to try out this Phonescope. And I appreciate you bringing up about digiscoping, because so much of what we do is trying to get an image of an animal so that I can show you, you can show me, we can evaluate it and decide if it's a buck that we want to harvest. And it's very important, I think, to be as good as you can at digiscoping. And we started out just putting our phones up to our optics, putting our cameras up to our optics, and it's amazing to see what technology and all the advances with the digiscoping adapters and what have you, how our content, our photos and videos have gotten way better. Definitely.
It makes it fun for our hunters and for us to be able to look back on stuff and look back on the videos and the pictures, and it just adds to it for sure.
Yeah. So, in closing, let's just talk a little bit about hunting the rut for Coues deer and kind of what your mentality is every day when you go out into the field. What are you looking for, and what's kind of your strategy when you hunt during the rut, and then even when you find a deer, what are you thinking?
Well, I would say just the people that are have never hunted Coues deer or are thinking about maybe coming and hunting with us. The Mexico hunt is a great time, great weather usually, and there's not a lot of downtime. When we leave in the morning, we take lunches and we're gone. We're glassing and hunting all day. It seems like the days are a little bit shorter. The deer move around a lot, so we're bouncing around from knob to knob, looking for the right buck. And once we find one, we kind of hone in on it, and strategy is don't take your eyes off it and stay with it, and hopefully get it shot.
Yeah, when they're rutting, they're just a lot of times they're running around like wild men, just running those does around, and it's a double-edged sword. Usually during the rut, you can see more deer, and you tend to see some of the bigger bucks. But like we've talked about before in the podcast, when they're moving around and chasing does, sometimes it's harder to get on to actually get them shot. So you just have to be really patient. You have to always keep your eyes off them. If you take your eyes off a rutting buck that's moving around, the likelihood when you move over to another knob of finding him again is not real good. And we like to use radios to keep an eye on them, but we also like to use the leapfrog system. If it's a buck, a Boone and Crockett type buck, and someone wants to enter it in the book, and they say we don't want to use a radio, it's important if you've got two guys. We usually are hunting with a guide and a hunter, usually two guys in a group in every group. We always like to say, okay, you stay here and stay on the buck, and I'm going to leapfrog up to the next knob into the shooting position, or vice versa. You stay back and watch, and the hunter goes in and gets in position, where nobody is not watching the deer at some point in time. Then once the shooter gets over in position, the other guy can come to him, and even if the shooter has not found the buck yet or not, at least the guy that was watching him can say he was right here. Here's where he's at.
Yeah, definitely. It's crucial. Hunting Coues deer in general, never take your eyes off them.
Yeah. Well, buddy, it was awesome having you on here on the podcast, and I look forward to going down and spending time down there chasing Coues deer for a couple weeks. And it's always a time that I look forward to every year, and can't wait to see those Sonoran sunrises and eat some of that great food and just enjoy that experience and that culture that just seems like there's nothing like Mexico. And it's always one of the highlights of our year, and It's always fun strategizing and picking apart these ranches with you. Hopefully we can dredge out a couple great bucks and have a good time with our clients.
Yeah, look forward to for doing another podcast here after maybe in about a month after we get back and get our feet under us, and it should looking forward to another season down there with you.
Yeah, hopefully we can dredge out a couple whoppers and find some good deer and hopefully some gnarly deer. Arizona, if Mexico's anything like what Arizona has been this year, I've got high expectations for some solid deer. Hopefully we find some extra points and some cool stuff down there. So until next time, buddy, God bless you. And yeah, it's always fun having having some strategy sessions with you.
Sounds good, man.
Okay, take care.
Talk to you later.
Thanks for listening to the J. Scott Outdoors Western Big Game Hunting and Fishing Podcast, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Use the promo code JScott and receive a $50 Coues gift card when signing up for the GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com Insider and join today.